It was a quiet, uneventful Monday morning on August 16, 2010, in the sleepy town of Nebworth, Hertfordshire. For Mitchell Kerry, a 43-year-old graphic designer and father of two, it began like any other day. He skipped breakfast that morning, rushing off to work, thinking he'd grab something later. Nothing out of the ordinary, just another busy start in a routine life. But that one small decision, to wait until lunch, would be the beginning of something no one could have seen coming. By noon, hunger had set in. Mitchell stepped out of the office and walked to a nearby cafe, something he'd done countless times before. He ordered a simple corned beef sandwich. Quick, familiar, safe. He returned to his desk and unwrapped the sandwich, taking bites between tasks. Everything seemed fine, but within 25 minutes, Mitchell's body began to betray him. He broke out into a cold sweat, his face pale, and he clutched his stomach. The pain was so violent he stripped off his clothes, desperate for relief, describing it to coworkers as 10 out of 10. Alarmed, they called for emergency help. Paramedics arrived swiftly and rushed him to Lister Hospital in Stevenage. At the hospital, doctors suspected food poisoning, painful but manageable. They gave him painkillers and sent him home. Rest and fluids, they said. Take it easy. That night, Mitchell tried to follow their advice, curling up at home, trusting the worst was over. But the worst was just beginning. By the next morning, August 17th, Mitchell was in agony. He was vomiting uncontrollably, his body racked with intense cramps. His wife, Debbie, watched in horror as he deteriorated before her eyes. Then, suddenly, he collapsed. She dialed emergency services, panic setting in. Paramedics arrived, but what they found was far more serious than anyone had imagined. Mitchell had already suffered a heart attack. His organs were failing. Every minute mattered. They rushed him back to the hospital, where doctors fought to keep him alive, but nothing worked. In the early hours of August 18th, surrounded by machines and desperate hands trying to save him, Mitchell slipped away. The cause? A microscopic killer. Tests revealed a rare bacterial infection, Clostridium perfringens type A, a strain so deadly, so swift, that only 7 other cases had ever been documented around the world. Once inside the bloodstream, it moves fast, shutting down organs, overwhelming the immune system, and almost always fatal. In Mitchell's case, the sandwich he ate, something so small, so mundane, was likely the source. A few contaminated bites, and it was already too late. Health officers tested the cafe's corned beef, but found no contamination. It was frustrating. No clear culprit, no charges, no answers. But the timeline was undeniable. Experts agreed. The sandwich was almost certainly the trigger. The shock of Mitchell's death rippled far beyond his workplace and home. He wasn't just another name on a hospital chart. Mitchell had already faced tragedy once. His first wife, Anna Wilson, had died young in 1998 from a rare cancer. She was only 31. Anna was the daughter of beloved TV presenter and former Arsenal goalkeeper Bob Wilson. When Anna passed, Mitchell stayed close with her family. Bob and his wife Megs thought of him like a son. He had rebuilt his life, slowly, painfully. In 2004, he found love again with Debbie Smith, a close friend of Anna's. They married, they built a home together. He raised his sons, Dylan and Yuan, then just 9 and 7. They were a quiet family in a quiet town, until their world shattered again. This wasn't just about bad luck or freak odds. It was about how fragile life can be, how fast the ground can fall out from under you. Coroner Edward Thomas called it one of the rarest cases he'd ever seen. He ordered that Mitchell's case be shared with the Department of Health to raise awareness. The official cause of death, multiple organ failure caused by a rare bacterial infection that triggered a deadly chain reaction inside his body. The cafe, the suppliers, and the supermarket chain Aldi all were questioned, but no charges were brought. No one was found at fault. The system said everything was safe, but Mitchell's family had no one to blame, no one to hold accountable, only a cruel twist of fate. Mitchell Kerry didn't die from negligence. He didn't take a risk or ignore warning signs. He just bought a sandwich, the kind you or I might eat without thinking twice. That's what makes this so terrifying. The internet has no shortage of wild trends, but few have sparked as much controversy and heartbreak as the infamous One Chip Challenge. Marketed as a test of bravery and spice tolerance, the challenge dares participants to eat a single jet-black tortilla chip coated with some of the world's hottest peppers, the Carolina Reaper and Naga Viper. For many, it was all fun and fiery pain, a few tears, maybe some milk chugging, and lots of social media clout. But for 14-year-old Harris Walaba from Worcester, Massachusetts, the challenge ended not with a laugh, but with tragedy. On September 1st, 2023, Harris took part in the viral dare. He was a bright and active sophomore at Doherty Memorial High School, known for his love of basketball, video games, and his warm, goofy personality. Like countless teens before him, he wanted to try the challenge, possibly to impress friends, maybe for the thrill, or just to see what all the fuss was about. What followed, though, was anything but expected. Harris began to feel unwell shortly after eating the chip. He was sent home from school, where he collapsed just hours later. He was rushed to the hospital, but tragically he didn't make it. The news shocked the local community and quickly spread across the country. What had been seen as a harmless social media stunt suddenly had a body count. Everyone began asking the same question: how could one chip be so dangerous? The official autopsy revealed that Harris died from cardiopulmonary arrest, triggered in the context of ingesting food with high concentrations of capsaicin, the chemical that gives chili peppers their heat. It turned out that Harris had an enlarged heart and a congenital condition called myocardial bridging, which may have made him more vulnerable to the extreme effects of the chip's heat. In simpler terms, the chip's intensity put his heart under more stress than it could handle. After his death, there was immediate outrage and concern. The One Chip Challenge, made by a brand called Pancake, a subsidiary of Hershey, had long been sold with warning labels. It even came in a coffin-shaped box. But despite all the dramatic packaging, it was still easy for kids and teens to get their hands on it, sometimes directly from convenience store shelves. Pancake quickly pulled the product from the market, and the challenge was discontinued in September 2023. But for Harris's family, that decision came far too late. In July 2024, Harris's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Pancake, Hershey, Walgreens, the store that sold the chip, and others. The lawsuit alleges that the chip was marketed recklessly and made widely available to minors despite its known dangers. The family described Harris as a healthy, loving teenager with a bright future, someone who should still be here, laughing with his friends and planning for college. Their goal now is to prevent other families from going through the same unimaginable pain. The tragedy sparked a wider conversation about internet challenges, marketing ethics, and just how far we should go for viral content. While the One Chip Challenge was meant to be a spicy joke, Harris's death was a brutal reminder that some things are no laughing matter, especially when young lives are at stake. The world may never look at a chip the same way again. It was April 4th, 2019, in the quiet town of Chorley, Lancashire. Darren Hickey, a 51-year-old wedding venue manager, was wrapping up another workday at Ridgemont House. Darren wasn't just known for his professionalism, he was admired for his strength. Just 7 years earlier, he had survived a massive stroke that nearly took his life. 18 long months in the hospital, relearning how to walk and speak. But he fought, and he won, rebuilding his life with purpose, pouring his energy into charity work, and earning the Stroke Association's Inspirational Person of Courage Award. But that afternoon, something unthinkable happened. Something so small, so ordinary, that it barely registered as a threat. As Darren prepared to leave work, a chef offered him a bite of a fish cake meant for an upcoming event. Just one small taste. Darren, always helpful, took a bite without hesitation. What he didn't know was that the inside was scalding hot. It burned his throat, deep, unseen, and dangerously. He brushed it off, thinking it was just a minor irritation. After all he had been through, this was nothing. Or so he thought. But the pain didn't fade. It worsened. He told his partner, Neil Parkinson, who urged him to get it checked out. Darren made his way to the urgent care ward at Chorley Hospital, explaining the pain, the burn, and his difficulty swallowing. A healthcare practitioner examined him and even consulted with a specialist at another hospital. But because the burn was hidden deep in his throat, out of sight, there were no visible injuries to his mouth or tongue. With little to go on, Darren was sent home with some paracetamol and a warning to return if things got worse. Behind the scenes, the real danger was already building. Later that evening, Darren tried to rest, but the pain didn't rest. His throat was swelling, slowly, silently, and fatally. By 9:45 p.m., Neil heard disturbing sounds. Darren was choking, gasping for air. Neil rushed to him, trying desperately to help. Panic set in. He called for an ambulance, but even that lifeline was delayed. Paramedics lost precious minutes trying to locate their address. By the time help arrived, it was too late. The swelling had completely blocked Darren's airway. He was rushed to Royal Bolton Hospital, but he never regained consciousness. In the early hours of April 5th, Darren was gone, just 12 hours after tasting a fish cake. During the inquest at Bolton Coroner's Court, Dr. Patrick Waugh, the pathologist who examined Darren's body, revealed the horrifying truth. The intense internal burn had caused Darren's voice box to swell to the point where he could no longer breathe. It was something usually seen in industrial accidents or fire victims, not from a bite of food. The tragedy wasn't just in what happened, it was in how invisible it was. No external injuries, no obvious signs, just a slow, silent march toward disaster. The coroner, Alan Walsh, called it what it was, a rare, devastating tragedy. But none of it could bring Darren back. His loved ones, his community, were left stunned, heartbroken. This was a man who had battled back from death once, who gave hope to others, who smiled through pain, gave to charity, and lived with purpose. And now, he was gone because of a single bite. On a summer evening in August 2019, a festive mood filled Chukchansi Park in Fresno, California. The Fresno Grizzlies were hosting their popular taco truck throwdown, an event that combined baseball, food trucks, and a taco eating contest to entertain the crowd. One of the eager participants in the contest was 41-year-old Dana Hutchens, a local man who had arrived ready to compete with enthusiasm and determination. Described by friends and family as full of life and always up for fun, Dana didn't have professional eating experience, but he was excited to be part of the event. Unfortunately, what was supposed to be a light-hearted competition quickly turned tragic. As the contest began, Dana reportedly started eating at a rapid pace, not chewing thoroughly as he rushed to keep up. Witnesses later recalled him shoveling tacos into his mouth, likely unaware of how dangerous that could be. Within minutes, something went wrong. He collapsed during the contest, prompting a swift response from on-site medical personnel and paramedics. Despite their immediate efforts, Dana was rushed to Community Regional Medical Center, where he was later pronounced dead. The cause: choking. The news stunned the crowd, the organizers, and most of all, Dana's family. His son, just 18 years old at the time, later shared how surreal and devastating the loss was. In the aftermath, the Fresno Grizzlies canceled the upcoming professional taco eating competition out of respect and concern. What began as a community celebration had turned into a heartbreaking reminder of how even casual competitions can carry real risks, especially for untrained participants. The incident also sparked wider conversations about safety protocols in amateur eating events. While professional eaters often train for months and know how to manage their pace, the average person usually isn't aware of the physical strain or dangers associated with speed eating. In April 2021, Dana's son filed a lawsuit against Fresno Sports and Events LLC, the organization behind the contest. The suit alleged negligence and pointed out that no warnings or safety measures had been provided to participants. His legal team emphasized that amateurs like Dana had no way of knowing the potential hazards, and that organizers have a responsibility to ensure such events are conducted with proper care. The case brought renewed attention to the lack of regulation in public food competitions, particularly those involving audience members rather than trained professionals. Dana's story struck a chord with many because it showed how quickly something fun can turn fatal. It was a stark contrast to the usual tone of these events, which often focus on lighthearted competition and big appetites. Behind the headlines was a grieving family left to make sense of a senseless loss, and a city grappling with how to prevent similar tragedies. While the taco eating contest may have been intended as harmless entertainment, the incident served as a sobering lesson on the importance of safety, oversight, and preparation, even in the most unexpected of places. In remembering Dana Hutchens, many hope that changes will be made to better protect participants and ensure that future events prioritize not just fun, but also well-being. It was the evening of July 20th, 2022, in Mumbai. There was 27-year-old Rehea Nishad, a young woman carving out her place in the world. Life hadn't been easy. She shared a modest home in the narrow lanes of Malad West with her husband and brother-in-law. That night, a quiet, almost invisible detail unraveled everything. Their home had been fighting a silent war, rats. Like many in the city, Rehea had grown used to solving problems with grit and ingenuity. Her solution? A simple one. She injected poison into a few tomatoes, intending to lay them out for the rodents. A necessary risk, she thought. A smart fix? She placed the bait aside, tucked away from the food, and carried on with her day. Hours later, weary from the Mumbai heat and another exhausting day, Rehea longed for something warm and easy. Instant noodles, comfort food. Her hand reached for a tomato, one she had poisoned herself. She sliced it, dropped it in, stirred the pot, and unknowingly sealed her fate. Rehea ate her noodles without a second thought, but the moment of peace was brief. Her stomach turned. At first, it seemed mild, maybe indigestion, but within minutes the pain sharpened. Nausea twisted through her body, and her strength began to vanish. Her husband and brother-in-law, alarmed by her sudden condition, rushed her to Shatabdi Hospital. But the poison was already working its way through her. The doctors tried urgently, but it was too late. Rehea's body could not fight what she had unknowingly put inside it. 2 days later, on July 22nd, she died. Her family was left in pieces, the kind of pain that hangs in the corners of a home for years. That kind of loss doesn't fade, it just lingers. And then, barely a month later, it happened again. On August 13th, in Sakinaka, another part of Mumbai, 24-year-old Kajol Par made a mistake no one should have to die from. She wasn't feeling well. A stomach ache, just discomfort. She reached for what she thought was medicine. It was rat poison. She swallowed it before realizing something was wrong. A burning in her throat, a feeling that didn't match a normal remedy. Panic surged. Alone and terrified, Kajol called her mother. She described the pain, begged for help. Her mother and brother raced to her. They took her to a nearby hospital, but her body was already in distress. She was transferred again, to a larger facility. Then again, this time to KEM Hospital. Each time, the news got worse. The poison had ravaged her liver. Her organs were failing. Despite everything doctors tried, her body was slipping beyond reach. 6 days after it all began, on August 19th, Kajol passed away. Her husband, Abhishek, was on a trekking trip when she died. He returned to a silence that no phone call could prepare him for. Police, once again, found no signs of foul play. Just another tragic, avoidable death. Another moment's distraction that turned fatal. 2 young women, 2 homes, 2 fatal mistakes. In October 2023, in the city of Gwangju, South Korea, a tragic and unusual incident unfolded that gripped the internet and reignited a long-standing debate about the safety of certain traditional dishes. An 82-year-old man lost his life after choking on sanakji, a popular Korean delicacy that consists of live octopus tentacles served while still squirming on the plate. While to some this might sound like an adventurous culinary experience, this case proved once again that even cherished traditions can carry serious risks, especially when those traditions involve food that actively tries to latch onto your throat. Sanakji is not your everyday seafood. The octopus is either served whole while still alive or, more commonly, cut into pieces while the nervous system is still active. The result? Twitching, squirming tentacles that react to soy sauce and sesame oil like they've been possessed. For locals and daring tourists alike, it's an iconic dish that symbolizes freshness and excitement. But here's the kicker. Those tiny suction cups don't stop working after the octopus is chopped. They can stick to your mouth, your throat, or, in the worst-case scenario, your windpipe. And that is exactly what happened to the elderly man in Gwangju. A piece got lodged in his throat, and despite emergency medical attention, he couldn't be revived. What started as a routine meal ended in a fatal tragedy. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated case. South Korea has reported multiple deaths over the years due to choking on sanakji, with several incidents making headlines as far back as the 2000s. It is a silent danger hidden beneath the novelty of the dish. While many locals are familiar with the proper way to eat it, Chewing thoroughly and cutting it into smaller pieces, accidents still happen, especially among the elderly. In this instance, the man reportedly suffered cardiac arrest triggered by asphyxiation, a swift and devastating end caused by something as deceptively simple as a bite of food. So why do people continue to eat sanakji knowing the risks? The answer lies somewhere between tradition, thrill-seeking, and cultural pride. For many Koreans, sanakji is more than just a dish. It is a symbol of culinary identity and an experience passed down through generations. Tourists seek it out for its shock factor. There is something about wrestling with your food that makes for a memorable dinner story. But with that thrill comes danger, and this recent tragedy serves as a chilling reminder that the consequences can be very real. In light of such incidents, health officials and food safety experts often advise people to be cautious. The golden rule: cut the tentacles into small, manageable pieces. Chew slowly and thoroughly, and definitely avoid alcohol while eating it. Alcohol can dull your reflexes and impair your ability to swallow safely. Some have even called for stricter guidelines in restaurants when serving sanakji, especially to older customers who may be at higher risk. After all, no delicacy is worth a life, no matter how traditional or exciting it may be. As headlines about the Gwangju incident made waves across news platforms and social media, it sparked conversations about where the line should be drawn between tradition and safety. While sanakji remains an important part of Korean cuisine, this heartbreaking case reminds us that even the most celebrated foods should be approached with care and awareness. Because sometimes the food on your plate doesn't just squirm, it fights back. It was October 10th, 2014, in the quiet town of Rhyl, Wales. Vera Williams, a 75-year-old woman living in a peaceful home at Les Tudno, started her day like any other, with a simple breakfast. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place, just toast. But that ordinary meal marked the beginning of a devastating chain of events that would end in tragedy. As Vera bit into her toast, a sharp fragment caught in her throat. It wasn't dramatic, no choking, no gasping for air, just a sudden, uncomfortable pain. She brushed it off, as so many of us would, but inside, something was terribly wrong. Vera, who had long battled severe heart disease, decided to visit the emergency department at Ysbyty Glan Clwyd. She reported throat pain, hoping for some reassurance. A junior doctor examined her but found nothing alarming. There were no visible signs of anything serious. No blood, no swelling, no obstruction. So, without further tests, she was sent home. But the pain didn't go away. For nearly 2 weeks, Vera lived with that discomfort, quietly, patiently, perhaps hoping it would pass, perhaps thinking it wasn't worth the trouble to go back. She didn't know that inside her body, a time bomb was ticking. On October 23rd, she returned to the hospital. She was seen by Dr. Eddie Adele and mentioned pain in her neck, but she didn't explain that the pain had been with her since her last visit. Without the full picture, Dr. Adele suspected a minor infection. He prescribed antibiotics and sent her home once again. By the next day, everything changed. Vera suddenly began coughing up blood. It was violent, terrifying. She was rushed to the hospital, this time in critical condition. Doctors immediately performed a CT scan, and what they found was shocking. That sharp piece of toast had torn a hole in her esophagus. The injury had gone undetected for weeks, and now it had led to a rare and deadly condition, esophageal perforation. Blood was leaking into her intestines. Her body was failing. This type of injury is incredibly rare, only about 3 cases per million people. But for Vera, it was real, and now it was too late. Surgery might have saved her, but her fragile heart made the operation far too risky. Doctors could only try to manage the damage. Despite their efforts, Vera's condition deteriorated rapidly. A few days later, she was gone. Her death sent shockwaves through the community. How could something as harmless as toast lead to this? An inquest was launched to uncover whether anything could have been done differently. Senior emergency consultant Dr. Marion Hughes reviewed the case and acknowledged the tragic nature of it all. The doctors, she said, had acted based on what they knew. Even in her nearly 40 years of experience, Dr. Hughes had never seen a case like Vera's. That's how rare it was. But the inquest also revealed cracks in the system. At the time, the hospital was still relying on paper records. That meant doctors couldn't easily track a patient's previous visits or see the full timeline of symptoms. Coroner Nicola Jones pointed out that if electronic records had been in place, Dr. Adele might have known Vera had been there just 2 weeks earlier, complaining of throat pain. That could have changed everything. Maybe, but maybe not. Vera's heart condition made any intervention incredibly risky. No one can say for sure if the outcome would have been different. Still, her story forces us to face an unsettling truth. Sometimes, a tiny moment, a bite, a word left unsaid, can set off a fatal chain reaction. Pancake eating contests are usually all fun and carbs, syrup, smiles, and a little friendly competition. But in April 2017, what started as a lighthearted charity event at Sacred Heart University in Connecticut took a tragic turn that no one saw coming. Caitlin Nelson, a 20-year-old student with a warm heart and a history shaped by loss and resilience, joined the contest like many of her classmates. It was part of Greek Week, a time typically filled with games, bonding, and college camaraderie. Caitlin wasn't just any student. She was studying social work, volunteering with trauma survivors, and had lived through her own unimaginable loss when her father, a Port Authority police officer, was killed in the 9/11 attacks. But that day in March 2017, the spotlight wasn't on grief or past pain. It was on pancakes, of all things. Just a few minutes into the competition, Caitlin suddenly began choking. Onlookers first thought it was part of the act, a gag perhaps, but the situation escalated terrifyingly fast. She collapsed, and people rushed in to help. Some were nursing students, others campus police, but despite CPR and emergency efforts, Caitlin's airway was blocked by a mass of food. She was taken to the hospital and later transferred to a critical care center in New York, but tragically, her brain had been deprived of oxygen for too long. After 3 days of fighting for her life, she passed away on April 2nd. The news shocked her campus, the local community, and even national audiences. People couldn't wrap their heads around it. How could something as routine as eating pancakes turn fatal? Candlelight vigils were held, and the university lowered its flag to half-mast. Her sorority sisters, friends, and professors remembered her not just for her bubbly personality, but also for her compassion and dedication to helping others. Caitlin had been certified in youth mental health first aid and spent time working with children affected by the Sandy Hook tragedy, a reflection of her deep empathy and commitment to healing. But what followed her death raised more difficult questions. Her family, still reeling from the shock, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Sacred Heart University, arguing that the event lacked proper medical supervision and overlooked the obvious choking hazards of a speed eating contest. The lawsuit pointed out that eating competitions, though popular, aren't without risk, especially when they pressure participants to consume food unnaturally fast. In 2020, the university reached a confidential settlement with her family. No pancake or contest was worth a life, and that truth landed heavily. Health experts weighed in too, warning about the dangers of food-eating contests that blur the line between fun and recklessness. The body isn't designed to inhale stacks of food in seconds, and for all the laughs and cheers they bring, these events can carry hidden risks, especially without trained medical personnel on standby. Caitlin's story became a heartbreaking case study, a reminder that behind every silly campus game there must be safety measures, clear planning, and caution. The tragedy changed things. More colleges began reevaluating their event policies, some even canceling eating contests altogether. Caitlin's name still surfaces in discussions about event safety and student well-being, and her memory continues to inspire change. For her loved ones, she'll always be remembered as the girl with the bright smile who turned personal tragedy into purpose and kindness. But for the rest of the world, her story is a sobering lesson. Even moments meant to be joyful can take an unexpected, irreversible turn. And while no one could have predicted such an outcome, it's a painful example of how quickly life can shift from laughter to silence in just a matter of bites. It was February 25, 2010, in Invercargill. Inside a modest home, Christopher Hodkinson stumbled upon a scene no partner should ever have to witness. Natasha Harris, the woman he had loved for 15 years, lay slumped against the bathroom wall. Her breaths were short, shallow, fading. Panic set in. He called for help, but it was too late. Natasha died that evening from cardiac arrest. She was just 30 years old. She left behind 8 young children and a partner. As the shock wore off and questions took root, what surfaced was a truth few could have imagined. Natasha wasn't battling drugs or alcohol. Her silent killer? CocaCola. Her addiction didn't start with tragedy. It started in her teens, one glass here, another there. But over the years, it spiraled. By the end, she was drinking up to 10 liters of Coke a day, about 18 pints, every single day. That meant more than 11 times the recommended daily sugar intake and double the safe amount of caffeine. Her day began with Coke. It ended with Coke. Without it, she trembled, snapped at her family, and felt herself unraveling. It wasn't just a habit, it was a dependency. Her mother-in-law, Vivian Hodkinson, watched it grow. If the fridge ran low, Natasha grew anxious. For years, she struggled with fatigue. She was constantly nauseous. Her heart raced and her muscles weakened. She vomited often, sometimes daily. Everyone assumed it was stress or unrelated illness. No one thought the soda could be the reason. But inside her body, damage was mounting. Her teeth had rotted and were eventually removed. One of her children was even born without enamel on their teeth, something doctors linked to Natasha's Coke intake during pregnancy. And then there was her liver, enlarged, filled with fatty deposits from years of sugar abuse. An autopsy revealed she suffered from hypokalemia, dangerously low potassium levels that can trigger heart failure. Her caffeine intake only made things worse, feeding an irregular heartbeat that would become fatal. On the day she died, Natasha hadn't seemed gravely ill. She felt a bit off, said as much, but not in a way that screamed emergency. Hours later, she collapsed, and when the paramedics arrived, there was nothing they could do. The inquest that followed peeled back the layers of her life and exposed the consequences of unchecked consumption. Coroner David Crerar was blunt. Without the excessive intake of Coca-Cola, Natasha's death would likely not have happened. Not the way it did, not when it did. He pointed to the metabolic chaos inside her. The caffeine, the sugar, the potassium crash. Health experts weighed in. Drinking that much fluid every day could be dangerous. Coca-Cola Oceania, for their part, expressed regret over the death, but pushed back. They claimed there was no clear proof their product caused the cardiac arrest. They said they couldn't control how much a person chose to drink. But the coroner didn't stop there. He urged Coca-Cola to put caffeine labels on their bottles. He called for warnings about excessive consumption, and he asked the New Zealand Ministry of Health to consider tighter regulations on caffeinated beverages. Would labels have made a difference? Some weren't so sure. Natasha smoked heavily. She often ignored medical advice. She was exhausted, trapped in a cycle of giving everything to her kids and saving nothing for herself. Her sister, Rehea, described the Coke as her escape. Others reached for alcohol, some used drugs. Natasha had soda. That's how she coped. She poured herself into her children, often skipping meals to make sure they were fed. She spent weeks planning their birthdays, hoping to make each one magical. Her world revolved around them, but her body, quietly, was giving out. After she died, Christopher tried to care for their children, but the burden was too much. Eventually, the kids were placed into state care. Christopher's life spiraled with grief, financial strain, and legal trouble. Back in 2007, when the Nintendo Wii was the hottest thing on the market and nearly impossible to find in stores, a California radio station decided to hold a quirky little contest called Hold Your Wii for a Wii. The premise? Simple but bizarre. Contestants would drink large amounts of water without going to the bathroom, and whoever held it in the longest would win a brand new Wii console. It sounded silly, even a bit funny at first glance, but what started as a promotional stunt quickly spiraled into one of the most tragic and avoidable incidents in radio history. Jennifer Strange, a 28-year-old mother of 3 from Rancho Cordova, joined the contest on January 12, 2007, hoping to win the Wii for her children. Like many parents at the time, she wanted to give them something special, and if that meant chugging some water and holding it for a few hours, so be it. She showed up cheerful and ready to compete, drinking bottle after bottle of water, over 1.5 gallons in total. As the contest went on, she started complaining of severe headaches and feeling ill. Her discomfort was even audible during the broadcast, but the radio hosts laughed it off. One DJ joked about people dying from drinking too much water, clearly not believing it could actually happen. But what the station didn't take seriously was the very real and dangerous condition known as water intoxication, or hyponatremia. It happens when someone drinks an excessive amount of water in a short period, diluting the body's sodium levels and leading to swelling in the brain. Jennifer's symptoms were textbook, but sadly no one stepped in. Not the DJs, not the staff, not even the nurse who had reportedly called the station earlier warning about the dangers of the contest. Jennifer left the station hours later feeling visibly unwell. She called her co-workers to say she wasn't feeling right and needed to go home. Not long after, she was found dead in her bathroom. The official cause, acute water intoxication. The news hit hard, not just because of how tragic and preventable it was, but because it happened under the watch of people who should have known better. The DJs had laughed. Listeners had called in warning them, and yet it continued. The fallout was swift and intense. The radio station, KDND 107.9 The End, came under major fire. 10 employees were fired, including the 3 DJs who had hosted the show. But the consequences didn't stop there. Jennifer's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the station's parent company, Entercom Sacramento, and in 2009, they were awarded $16.5 million in damages. The lawsuit revealed disturbing audio clips from the contest where the hosts openly joked about someone dying from water overdose, clearly aware of the risk but continuing anyway. Public outrage didn't just stop at the lawsuit. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, was called in to investigate, and the case was cited as one of the reasons the station eventually lost its license and was shut down in 2017. What was meant to be a cheeky publicity stunt had turned into a cautionary tale about media responsibility and the very real dangers of pushing limits for entertainment. Jennifer's death became more than just a headline. It sparked discussions around the globe about the ethics of radio contests, the importance of informed consent, and the tragic consequences of ignoring science and medical advice for the sake of ratings. She wasn't some reckless thrill seeker. She was a devoted mother trying to win a gift for her children. In the end, the incident stands as a heartbreaking reminder. Sometimes what sounds like a harmless game can have fatal consequences when common sense and compassion take a back seat. And no prize, no matter how shiny, fun, or rare, is ever worth someone's life.